Welcome back to another Three Things with TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm staff writer Chelsea Sipple, and this is publisher Andrew Jones. Andrew's at Peterson Center right now, and following UNC's loss to Pitt, UNC 65, Pitt 73. AJ, you're in the stadium right now, and we got to talk about Pitt closed on a 14-2 run, and UNC missed 10 out of their 11 shots. And this clearly led to the loss.
And it's 10 out of the last 11. We've seen this a lot.
We have.
And I'm going to hit on something that Hubert said, which was accurate, that it wasn't just the close tonight. There were some other factors at play. But the reality is, I talked with RJ and Seth about it. They were both very open, especially Seth. This just keeps happening. And Seth said they get late in games, when the set that they're running breaks down, they get into dribble mode. And it's a lot of wasted dribbles. Mm-hmm. No one's moving. Everyone's standing around. And it's a lot of excessive dribbling, which creates nothing. And then guys are trying to take very difficult shots. They did have a few opportunities to score during that stretch. Vidal and Lubin missed a layup, a little finger roll. Seth had a follow-up of his own miss that I thought he was going to bank in with one hand, but it didn't go in. And sometimes the ball doesn't fall through. But when you get outscored 14-2 to close it out, it's not just one or two plays like this. And when it happens again and again and again, and again, it's a bigger problem. And this is something that, unless this team figures it out, unless they know how to dial up, I don't know if it's more want. I don't know if it's detaching themselves from almost an expectation that bad things are going to happen. I don't really know exactly what it is, but unless that changes, this is probably going to happen, continue to happen. Because I think right now, 22 games into the season, they're 13-9. Mm-hmm. If you were to write 5 bullet points on what this team is, who is this team, the first or second thing is going to be the fact that they can't close games. And
we've seen that a lot lately.
And they certainly don't close them against decent teams. You know, the last 3 was today was at Wake and Stanford. Those are all decent teams. They did close at Notre Dame. They did close at State. Those are not decent teams. So the last decent team this team was closed against was UCLA, and shame on Mick Cronin for not getting Bilodeau the ball a lot more in that game. But Carolina took advantage. So that was over a month ago, like 6 weeks ago. This is a big problem. And until it gets fixed, it's going to continue to be, I think, the biggest issue. And there are a lot of issues with this team. But on a night where they out-rebound Pitt on the road by 10 without Jalen Washington, a night where they shot real well for a while and then it kind of went away, they need to win games like that. They need to be able to put this in the win column. And when you're up 63-59 and Pitt had the door open for themselves, Pitt had an opportunity to extend the lead in that 10 minutes left to 6.5 minutes left stretch, 7 minutes left stretch, and didn't do it. And then Carolina took advantage. I thought, okay, that's a good sign for this team. They don't always go through that door when it's open. But they went through it. And they had one field goal after that the rest of the way. So that was 63-59, ends up 73-65. Kind of who they are, Chelsea. And until they show differently, that's how I will write and talk about them. And it's unfortunate for them because they did so many good things in this game. They had great energy. The energy that they didn't have against Boston College, they had here. But they're flawed defensively. They get flawed offensively. When things break down, they go into dribble mode. And Elliot Cadeau with foul trouble, I thought that was key. If Elliot doesn't get into foul trouble and commit some of the fouls he did and stays on the floor, they may have been able to finish this thing off.
Absolutely. Well, AJ, our second thing is 14 turnovers tonight led to 22 points, 9 blocked shots, and then led to 9 points. That was 31 points right there. So you saw it. Tell us what that looked like.
It's 31 points in a game where the opponent scores 75. So that means they get, or 73. So that means they got, 42 points conventionally?
Yeah. If I'm doing the math right in my head, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of points.
It is.
Carolina only had 14 turnovers. It seemed like they had about 20, but a lot of those blocked shots were really ill-advised plays by the Tar Heels, driving into traffic, trying to score over people 1,000 feet tall or bigger. It was as if they were driving 1-on-9, and everybody was the length of the basket. It was just some really ill-advised stuff. And while they're blocked shots, they're also, from an efficiency standpoint, they're like a turnover. And Pitt was able to get a ton of points out of it. And some of them came at just awful times. Just awful times. And Hubert said it wasn't just the turnovers, but where the turnovers were. In fact, a perfect example, and Hubert noted some of the segments in the game that cost them tonight. One was very late in the first half. Carolina's up 10, 44-34, and then RJ has 2 straight turnovers, and they lead to Jalen Lowe 3-pointers in transition. So that was 6 points off turnovers right there. Pitt closes the half on an 8-0 run, only down 2. Then, once again, Carolina starts out the second half on a 7-0 or 5-0 spurt. They go up 7, 49-42. Pitt calls timeout. They get an 8-0 run. Carolina's got 2 turnovers in there. Yeah. So that you go 10 turnovers and 5 block shots, maybe you win the game. But the stuff that I'd mentioned a few minutes ago about how stagnant they are offensively at times when there's so much wasted dribbling and there's non-movement, that forces guys to try to create, and the opposition knows, so they help off because they know that usually the ball's not getting pitched out, and they collapse and they get the stop, and they either force a turnover or a block shot, and that was what a lot of tonight was. There were some really, really good segments for this team offensively. The first 15 minutes of the game, they were outstanding on offense. But then they didn't close well into the first half. I think they missed 6 of their last 7, and they never got it going in the second half. I think they scored 21 points in the second half. A group with this much talent, it's inexcusable.
Yeah.
Pitt was switching 1 through 5, and that caused some problems. Some of the open threes that were there in the first half weren't there in the second half. And I just don't think this team handled it well. When set plays break down, they just don't get into freelance well. This has been a pretty consistent problem for the last few years. 2 years ago, it was a huge problem. They did not get into freelance well after a set broke down. Last year's team was better at it. This year's team really, really struggles at it, and we saw it tonight.
Honestly, well, AJ, we're seeing some of these struggles right now. We've got a big game coming up this weekend. Seeing what we saw tonight and, what we know coming up, what does this mean?
This game comes at a really bad time for this team.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in their right mind expects this team to go in there and win. I think they can compete, and we'll analyze Duke and stuff like that a lot more. I just think where this team's headspace is right now, not a great place. This was not good body language by the players late in the game on the floor, as opposed to Pitt. And then afterward, standing outside the locker room and talking to a few of them, and they're obviously disappointed. Hubert has to lift them up. He says he has no choice but to lift them up. They have no choice but to lift themselves up. But they're 13-9.
Yeah.
They're 6-4 in the league. This was an opportunity for a quad win tonight. Their opportunities are limited moving forward. After Duke, they play these guys at home. I don't know if I'd pick them to beat Pitt at home. I picked them not to win tonight. And then they go to Clemson, and they go to Syracuse. Syracuse isn't very good, but this club going up there, that's a tough assignment, because I think everything's a tough assignment for them right now.
Yeah.
Boston College was a tough assignment. So what does this mean? This means that we've seen the same problems recur throughout the season. We saw the second game of the year in Lawrence Fieldhouse, in Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, the close that Kansas had, and that has been a problem ever since. They got down big for early in that game, and they had a stretch for the first 2 months where they were getting down big all the time. Now they go up 10 in the first half all the time, or 9, and it's wiped away in a minute. So they've reversed it, and what's common is they're still losing games when teams close them out in big runs, whether it's 11-5, 14-2, 12-2, whatever the case may be. It's not an impressive look. It's a club that struggles to find ways to win, and I'm not sure they know how to win, to be honest with you. So what this means is they're in a tough situation, and they have to pull themselves out. And the scheduling gods did them no favors to have to go roll into Durham this weekend, but it's there, and it's an opportunity, Chelsea.
It is.
North Carolina's these teams, when they play each other, crazy stuff happens. So who knows? But
That's true.
they're going to have to get past this quickly. And I thought that this was a very, very tough blow for these kids. More so, Wake was pretty tough too, but more so than maybe Stanford and a few of the others. In part, I think, because they're starting to pile up. So it's getting more difficult to process each time.
Absolutely. Well, on my end, this was kind of a rough loss to see on the TV, but hey, this weekend is an opportunity, and crazy things happen rival week, but I don't know, they've got some quick changes to make.
Well, we'll be there and see what happens, and we'll chronicle it like we always do.
Yeah, speaking of, well, that wraps up our three things. This is TarHeelIllustrated.com. Tonight, UNC 65, Pitt 73. AJ and I will be back soon.
Thanks.